Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we have got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. It was a huge weekend of Big Ten hoops. It was a lot of fun to watch a lot of great games Saturday. We had some good games on Sunday as well, but, a few kind of blowout games here, and then one interesting one where Indiana gets their comeback. We're not going to talk about Indiana, Maryland, or Ohio State, Michigan, but we are going to make sure we discuss Rutgers and Nebraska. But before we get into that, Kent, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Like, historic day in the Big Ten where it was finally proven that women are better than men at basketball. I don't know if you guys caught Caitlin Clark breaking the record today, so that we can put to bed now. And that's just, it's a good feeling, like going to sleep tonight knowing that, women are better. We can finally that discussion is over now. So I feel good about that.
I was told never to keep points with my wife,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been inspired now to start keeping points. So tonight I wrote on the whiteboard in our kitchen that I did the dishes.
Good.
And she hung her head and walked away.
It was nice knowing you, JR.
Yeah. I felt
Let us know how that couch is tonight.
We have Russ with us as well. Russ, how you doing tonight? And do you also feel like women are superior to men after today?
I mean, Kent makes some good points there. And it actually reminds me, I try to watch you guys, pretty regularly and stay caught up. But I feel like I haven't heard an update on your daughter's basketball team, Kent. Like, how did that go? How's that going?
Oh, man. Heartbreak Hotel, man. 9-0 regular, actually 8-0 regular season, won the semifinal game, and then we lost in the championship. It was a rough day here at the old home, man. But she pulled through. Like, she forgot about it pretty quickly. I'm still bitter about it though. I'm still upset.
Yeah,
I feel like it's my fault. Like, it's just bad coaching on my part, I think.
Yeah, coaches always remember the losses a lot longer than the players do. The players just move on next season.
Yeah, she had a great year though. Shout out to her.
Awesome.
Ken, if you had to compare yourself to a current Big Ten coach with your coaching, men's or women's, honestly, is there a good comparison you feel like?
I don't know. Like, I'll tell you what I did wrong, and then maybe you guys can tell me. Like, I just not good halftime adjustments in the championship game.
Juwan Howard
was able to have a really good regular season, and then kind of folded when it mattered the most. So you guys let me know. Who do you think that is?
I know where you're going with that, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't.
We'll just stick with the Juwan Howard. We'll go with the first point. We'll say Juwan. But
I'll go Brad Underwood, because Brad Underwood hadn't even made it to the second weekend with Illinois. So
that's true. Yeah. And also has a lot of good regular seasons too. It could be him or like a couple of people in the Big Ten. I won't say names, but it could be anyone.
If you get fired mid-season and then your assistant takes over and starts beating every team in the Big Ten, I know who you're like.
Yeah. I think I think the team would have been better without me, especially in the playoffs. I think that if I would have got fired, the assistant coach would have did a good job. Shout out to Patrick. He did a great job as my assistant this year. Great job.
Oh, Sonny's firing back for you.
Oh, I knew that would be good. I was going fishing there.
Underwood also never lost as a number one seed. Hey, the only other time that happened, the next year they won the national championship. So we'll see what happens this year. We will see what happens. Hey, before we get into it, guys, Dave came in early and asked a question, so I want to make sure we get to this. Dave asked, is college basketball non-conference scheduling the same as college football non-conference scheduling? Like in football, two teams will schedule themselves 8 or 10 years into the future. Russ, I think you know this one, so why don't you go ahead and clear this up for Dave?
Yeah, so it definitely is different. Football, you've got to plan things out a lot better because it's, you play on one day a week basically, and you have to plan out the stadiums. The TV deals are much bigger. And so with basketball, they also even with the exempt tournaments, they want the fields to be fairly even, especially Maui. They want it to be stacked. And so they don't want to go 4, 5, 6 years in advance because they don't know what that team might be at. So they want to stack it. And so they usually plan those maybe a year and a half out. And then a lot of the non-conference games that you fill the schedule in with, you fill those in after you find out your conference schedule. So the Big Ten will say, hey, keep this week and a half open for 2 games. And then maybe you only get 1 early game. Well, now you got to go find an opponent. If you're in Illinois, maybe you go find Southern Illinois and try to schedule a game. Or if you're in Indiana, you go find a Ball State and schedule it. So it's definitely kind of last second. Like even Purdue's series with Arizona, where they played in Indy and they're going to play in Vegas next year, that was determined like in June or July, like before this season started. So it's a lot of stuff is pretty last second with basketball, whereas football, they go way further in advance. And football will split it up like crazy. Like you might have a home and home where one game's played in, 2016. And then this last year was when we played the return game against Virginia Tech. So like it's, you can have 8-9 years between those agreed games. So football definitely has to be much more advanced than what basketball does.
Yeah, in football, the event itself is a lot bigger to like put on and stuff like that as well, because it's like an entire weekend type deal, all that stuff. So, yeah, good question, Dave. Appreciate you being here and asking that. One more comment before we get to it. Not this Russ guy again, Dylan says. Dylan, Russ was just talking about how you're going to come in here and hype us all up and call us all handsome. And then you
way to let me down, man.
It's tough.
Appreciate it.
That's tough,
okay,
man.
That's okay. We'll just make you feel bad about it, Dylan. All right, guys, let's get to the first game. Nebraska takes down Rutgers. Everything is right in the world. Nebraska played at home. Nebraska won their game, and nobody can really ever come into Lincoln and defeat the Cornhuskers because they're just invincible at home, other than Creighton. Creighton is the only team that is able to do that. So this was a game that Nebraska obviously just lights out shooting. Kasai Tamanaga, he really wasn't all that lights out shooting himself. He was 1 for 6, but still he was able to make plays. Not the passing assist guy, but able to make plays and get his shot, get around the rim a little bit more, which was nice to see. Kent, let's go to you first. What were your thoughts on just like Kasai Tamanaga, the game overall? I mean, we knew Nebraska was probably going to win this one. Did you have any big thoughts?
Not any huge thoughts. Like you pretty much covered it all right there. It's really tough to win at Nebraska, almost impossible to win at Nebraska. But just based on like the overall vibe of the game, I don't think that Rutgers really did a bad job defensively because they've been playing pretty well defensively lately. It's just that Nebraska is always humming when they're at home. It's just really tough to stop them, no matter how good you are or how well disciplined you are assignment wise. Speaking of Tominaga, by the way, I did retweet something that was pretty cool today. Nebraska basketball put out like a little 3-minute video about him, and he was talking about how like Nebraska is his second home, and it was really cool. Like I like kind of got chills watching it. Like everybody loves Casey, and like if you haven't seen that yet, either go to my Twitter or just straight to Nebraska's basketball Twitter. Check out that video. Super easy guy to cheer for. But yeah, as far as the game. Kind of like you said, what we expected. I thought Nebraska was going to win big in this one, and they did. And yeah, just like you said, man, what we expected. I'll just repeat myself because I don't know what else to say.
What do you think, Russ?
Yeah, so I mean, if I had to pick an all-energy team, Tominaga and Alec are both going to be on it. Like they're a lot of fun to watch. Like if I pick the most energetic and most fun guy to watch, I'm biased, so I'd probably pick Lance Jones. You guys have seen the Lance dance and those videos and things like that. But if I have to pick someone not on Purdue, Tominaga's at the top of that list, and Alec is probably not far behind. They are very high energy. They're a lot of fun to watch. They have a lot of fun playing the game. They don't take it too seriously, and those are the kind of guys I like to root for and like to see do well. And Tominaga led them in scoring tonight. Had a really good game. Even Alec had a double-double on his senior night. So it's really cool. This is the time of year where you get to see a lot of those cool stories like Kent was talking about, like that video where, a lot of teams are worried about postseason and the tournament and all that stuff. And that is important, and that kind of supersedes everything. But you get to see these senior night stories and these guys that, 4 or 5 of the best years of their life are spent at these universities playing this sport, and they might not ever play it again at a high level. So it's a pretty big deal to see some of these careers come to an end. That some guys have traveled halfway around the world. Some people like Caitlin Clark have set scoring records. So like it's a lot of cool things you get to see come to an end at the end of a season like this, besides just March Madness and the tournament and things like that. So.
Yeah, for sure. Ted came in here and says no one from outside the state of Nebraska can win at Nebraska. Great point, Ted. Great point. Yeah, that was another thing I was going to bring up, Russ, is that, senior night, I mean, obviously these guys, not only did they want to win, but they wanted to win in such a way that, they were remembered and they had their time. And it felt like Tominaga, like it felt like they were feeding him a little bit more in this one because they could kind of tell, the story and everything else with it. Like just a really, really cool experience. And it's nice when you schedule a team you feel like you can beat. I'm not trying to say anybody's bad or anything like that, but a team you feel like you can beat on your home night or on your senior night, because then you just feel better about it. Now, I'm sure Maryland felt that way going against Indiana, but Indiana played spoiler to their senior night, which was obviously heartbreaking for them. But for a team, especially like Nebraska, who not just they have these player stories, but just kind of the team story, not just this year, but like going into it as well. If anybody here has followed Nebraska basketball, you have figured out and heard the stories of, Fred Hoiberg trying to bring over the Iowa State system and not working. He's adjusting his recruiting. Nebraska's being patient with him, kind of giving him his time. And even when everybody on the outside thought, oh, Fred Hoiberg is going to be fired soon, they're giving him his time and saying, we believe in Fred Hoiberg, and look at where it's got him. I mean, they are a top 4 team in the Big Ten. I'm not afraid to say it. They are one of the 4 best teams in the Big Ten this year. It's obviously Purdue and Illinois at the top. And then I think Nebraska does make a case for that 3rd spot. It was Wisconsin earlier in the year, but to see them kind of fall down here lately, we'll talk about them in Illinois later. I think they do have a viable argument for being the the 3rd best team in this conference. And if not 3rd best, they are 4th best. And it's really interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but just because you're on the same topic and I just pulled it up, that's what I was looking up. Actually, with today's win and Northwestern's loss, I just pulled up the bracket. They are number 3 right now in the tournament. And
I thought they were going to be, or they were. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
If I did this right, it looks like that they are number 3 now in Nebraska is now, and Northwestern drops to number 4. And that's kind of what I was going to ask you guys about too, because someone made a really interesting point on Twitter about Nebraska possibly, like, I know either way you're going to have to see Purdue or Illinois in the semis, no matter what, if you have aspirations of winning the Big Ten tournament. But they were saying that it might be a little bit better to be towards the top of it in the fact that you would get to play the 5 seed instead of Michigan State, or like, I know there's a lot to determine still with 2 games left for some teams, but what do you guys think about that? Would you rather be the 3, be at the bottom and have to play Illinois, or would you rather be the 4 and then have to play Purdue in the semifinals? I guess we got a Purdue guy on. They beat Purdue at home by a lot. So would you rather try to play them again or no? If you're Nebraska, this is.
1 second. I do think Nebraska is still 4th because they're tied in conference wins. They do have more overall wins in 21.
They also have one more loss. I think they're
so. The website that I'm using, they give you the reason for the tiebreaker, and it says that Nebraska is above Northwestern based on the winning percentage against the number 1 team, which is Purdue, and Nebraska has beaten Purdue, and Northwestern is 1-1 against Purdue.
But Nebraska still has more conference losses.
Yeah, they're still a half game back technically.
Right now?
Yeah, because Northwestern's 11-7 in conference, and Nebraska's 11-8. So Northwestern's got to play.
So I think if they do tie.
Oh, yeah, you know what? I didn't click the no game for everybody else. That's on me. My bad. It had all the other games playing out. That's my bad. Let me check it now.
You are correct. If
you're right,
tied,
you guys are right. I take it back.
If they are tied, then
my bad,
they
dude.
will be.
I just clicked the games for today. I forgot to click the games for next week. My bad.
Ask your question again.
Oh, I was just saying, would you rather see Purdue in the semis or Illinois in the semis if you're Nebraska?
Illinois. I don't want to play Purdue.
I don't think it really matters too much at this point. I mean, I think that I would rather be a team that plays, if you need wins and you're trying to make the tournament, I would rather almost be playing on Thursday instead of Friday, which an interesting thing that was said too in the game was Nebraska's never played in the Big Ten tournament on Thursday, ever.
Wow.
Because whenever they played on Wednesday, they've always lost and never made it to Thursday.
Yeah.
So, but I would want to be a team that plays on Thursday, regardless of seeding, so that you can get a chance to have a win on Thursday, a quarterfinal win on Friday, and then worry about who you're going to play in the semis on Saturday. So, because Illinois, like we'll get to them later, Illinois is very, very efficient offensively. They're a very dangerous team. You kind of know they're a little bit one-dimensional, but at the same time, Purdue, there's a recipe to how you beat Purdue, right? We've got 3 conference losses. We're not perfect. So, I think it matters more to try to get a couple winnable games in the tournament before you have to worry about playing in Illinois or Purdue.
Yeah. Jeff asked a good question here. I think he's talking about when I was talking about the 3 or 4 best teams in the Big Ten. It says, what about Northwestern? Guys, I would personally take Nebraska over Northwestern. This is just me personally. However, what do you guys think? You guys also taking Nebraska over Northwestern?
Is he just asking who's better between those two teams?
Yeah, I think he's just asking who's better because they're right there in the standings next to each other. Like,
I mean,
is the better team overall?
For me, for the whole year, I think Northwestern's been better. It's tough to say that today because they just lost, and obviously Nebraska just won, so there's a little bit of recency bias. But right. I think that Northwestern is still a more complete team than Nebraska. That's just me personally. I think they have a better. I think Boo Buie is, especially late here in the season and when tournament play starts, I think that that's the guy that you're going to want. And I think that they have enough down low and enough pieces that they're going to be a little bit better in March. That's just my opinion. But obviously, like I said, it's tough to say that today because Nebraska just won big and then Northwestern lost. But I'll take Northwestern, though.
What do you think, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, you already heard me fanboy over Tominaga and Alec, and, I love Wilcher and Mask as well. So I'd have to go Nebraska because they are the hotter team. I think they're also the deeper team. Northwestern doesn't have as much, varied scoring. It's kind of like, is Boo Buie going to go off for 20-plus points, or are we going home? I think that's what their tournament looks like, whereas Nebraska, they've got a few options where they could, beat you a couple different ways. And so I would take Nebraska over Northwestern for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting argument, and I think just as many people as say Nebraska, there's probably a similar amount to more probably that might be saying Northwestern. So it's definitely a viable argument. So I guess Nebraska, we could be saying, is a viable argument for fifth in the Big Ten as well. Thanks for correcting that there, Jeff. My big thing with it is what Philip brings up here, Northwestern with or without Barry. And that's a really important distinction to make because Northwestern.
Well, they're without him for the rest of the year, right?
Right. They're a different team without him. Guys, I do want to ask one question before we move on from this game. So obviously this is always a hotly debated topic because, the high teams up there always want their guy. Yeah, I know, Russ, you're itching for this one. They always want their guy to be coach of the year. And I get it. All right. I'm an Ohio State fan in football. I'm like Ryan Day or whoever, these guys should be coach of the year and all this stuff. But it's an award that the best coach never actually wins it because that's the way it's like who had the most impressive season because you stunk last year or you're at a program that's not as good. But Russ, we'll go to you first. Should Fred Hoiberg be the Big Ten coach of the year?
Yes. I'll surprise you and I'll say yes. Okay. Like you said, that was kind of be my statement was that it's not an award for the best coach in the conference. It's the best above expectations, really. Is what it is. It's not who actually recruited the best team and has the best program right now. And it's frustrating as a Purdue fan. It is. I get it. Purdue's the first team in Big Ten history to be number one 3 years in a row, right? He took a guy that was ranked in the 400s and he's going to be back-to-back National Player of the Year and he's going to have no Coach of the Year awards to show for it in any of those years. So it's weird, especially like last year we were picked fifth. So it wasn't like last year we were, they're going to run away with the conference and be first, but we were picked fifth and we won it by 3 games, but Northwestern still gets it because Northwestern was picked last and they make the tournament. So I've kind of made peace with that. And I do think Hoiberg, when you look at that and look at the way they award that award, it does go to a coach that exceeds expectations. Now, there's a guy at Ohio State that if he gets that team in the tournament, it's interesting to see how many games you have to coach to be Big Ten Coach of the Year. Because how many times has a coach got fired for performance in the middle of the season and somebody takes over and makes the tournament, especially that late in the season. So, but yeah, no, and I also want to say, I think it was on here. I don't know if it was season preview or after the hot start Nebraska had that I called this. I said, Nebraska's going to be a double bye team. They're going to be top 4 in the Big Ten tournament. So I'm going to have to go back and clip that receipt once, if Nebraska makes it, because they are in the 4th spot right now. So just saying.
I think it was after the hot
Clip
start.
it, baby.
Don't give yourself too much credit there, Russ. Kent, what do you think? Fred Hoiberg, Coach of the Year?
I'm fine with it. I'm not really someone that's going to go crazy about whoever gets it. I mean, if it goes to the best coach, it's Chris Collins every year. He's the best basketball coach. Period. I'm not even joking about that.
No, I know.
I think he is the best, actual able to coach basketball coach. So I think he would get it every year. But I did just pull up the list, though. 4 out of the 5 years, the last 5 years, it has gone to the team that did finish first in the Big Ten. So that's pretty interesting. But going back to exactly. Yeah. And it's funny. Matt Painter started that trend back in 18 and 19. So he did get one back then. And that's what kind of started. There was 4 years in a row. It went to Gard, Juwan Howard, believe it or not. And then Gard again, and then Collins last year, who was second and close to first last year. But I still think Collins deserved it last year. I will say, though, Russ, one point that you made is that it's an award kind of to someone who has exceeded expectations, right? So if I was going to list another guy that I think is very deserving of the award, it would be Ben Johnson this year, because their expectation was last place, and they're right in the middle of the pack right now. As of even like a week and a half ago, had NCAA tournament aspirations, maybe still do, possibly, depending on how the season ends. It's going to be kind of a long shot at this point with their non-conference schedule. But Ben Johnson, Matt Painter, Brad Underwood, or Fred Hoiberg, I would be fine with any of those 4 guys getting it, and I'm not going to throw a fit who it is. But I think it's obviously going to be one of those 4 guys.
Yeah, I think it's either Hoiberg, Johnson, or Diebler. I don't think Diebler wins it just because
Diebler? You think there's no way, dude?
I don't think he does. I'm just saying he's in the conversation. Like when I see people bring it up, those are the 3 guys that I see the most commonly brought up that I feel like can win it. Sonny again is bringing up Brad Underwood for us, and Sonny, that's why I said the thing earlier about like the powerhouses don't get it. Like Illinois is a powerhouse in basketball more often than not. And even though they've not had the deep tournament runs, like you can always count on Illinois to be a really good basketball team in the Big Ten year in and year out. And so like, it's just one of those things where like the expectations for Illinois are never all that low. So like Russ said, like you're never going to get that high exceeding expectations. Like, yes, Brad Underwood is 15-0 against Greg Gard and Juwan Howard. And I think the Illinois fans expect him to be 15-0 against those 2 guys, right? I mean, like that's what you want. So while I agree, Brad Underwood is one of the best coaches in the Big Ten, it's one of those things with like expectations, you know. So it's such a crazy award. Philip, Gard has just beneficiary of low expectations. It's not too often you win the award twice. I'll leave it there. It's not too often the award is won twice. So, and then we got some people for Ben Johnson, Dave, obviously in there, and I would not be upset with Ben Johnson or Fred Hoiberg. I think both of those guys are deserving.
Is the award given before or after Selection Sunday? Because I think if Minnesota makes the tournament and then the award is awarded after the Selection Sunday, I think that really helps Ben Johnson's case.
I don't remember if it's before or after.
I don't either.
I would think it's before because they have that big long. I don't know. I don't want to say that. I don't know. I don't remember when it is. Alibaba Gophers have a big win yesterday. Thoughts on Minnesota's remaining schedule: Indiana at home and banged up Northwestern on the road. If Minnesota wins both, they'd be 11-9. Yes, Alibaba, we're going to get to Minnesota and Penn State here soon at the end of the show. So we'll talk through that. I'll actually star that, so I make sure to get back to that comment when we do that one. But let's move on to Russ's guys, Michigan State at Purdue. This was a big game. We previewed it, and it was probably the most uneventful preview ever because I started it with saying, is anybody really picking Michigan State to beat Purdue in this one? And basically the entire game, I had no doubt. There were a few times when Michigan State brought it close. Things were looking up. Tyson Walker hit that buzzer beater at halftime, and I know there were some fans that were getting a little itchy, but for me, somebody who was watching it as I was kind of falling asleep because I was really tired Saturday night, I did not really fear for Purdue at all in this one. I felt like Purdue has this covered. It's fine. Michigan State might scare them a little bit, but they've got it. Russ, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, it was, we talked about it before we came on that I never really got nervous either. They did make a run at the end. Michigan State did, that is, but Purdue seemed pretty much in control. And, as much as I've joked that Michigan State's a bigger rival than what Indiana is recently, Purdue now has won 9 of the last 10 against Izzo. So Purdue's kind of owned that series even, as much as Izzo is a historical coach, a Hall of Fame coach, and he's going to be, as soon as he's eligible, he's going to go in the Hall. I mean, he might already be there, right? Like, because you can still get it while you're still coaching.
Yeah, I
didn't get that stat down, but, the 2 notes I wrote were Edey is good and crybaby Izzo. So, if you didn't watch the game, Izzo, they even talked about it on the announcers talked about before the game. They asked Izzo, Is he going to complain about fouls? How's that going to go? And he goes, no, I'm not going to say a thing after any of the fouls. Well, what does he do? He complained about every single call throughout the game. And there were even things that he complained about that didn't have to do with the foul call, that the paint crew was just giving it to him. Like every time he was complaining to the refs. And, Izzo, I feel like, has the biggest leash of any coach in the country with officials as far as getting a technical. Like Shrewsbury talked about last year at Penn State because he got a couple texts, and he's like, I get a tech just for asking a ref why they called a foul, like what the foul was, like not arguing with him, saying it wasn't a foul or whatever. But then you got these coaches like Izzo and maybe another guy we might talk about later, that they just go off on officials and they get no penalty, no repercussions. So, I just, Izzo is a Hall of Fame coach. He's a great coach. He's done a lot of great things, a lot of Final Fours, but he's such a crybaby now. Like, it's so hard to watch him coach a game because he is just always upset. His face always looks like he's constipated. Like, it's just, I can't do it. Like, he's just whining about everything. But then he goes to the post-game press conference and he praises Purdue and praises how good Painter is. And I'm like, man, I want to hate them so bad. I want to hate him so bad. But then he says something nice. But also,
he wants you guys to go to the Final Four. He said that.
He did. He said this is the year we should go. Yeah, like I said, he says something like that, and you're like, dadgummit, man, Izzo, why you got to do that? Why you got to do that? But Braden also, he's just showing people why he got snubbed from that Kuzi list, like why it was ridiculous that he wasn't considered a top 10 point guard, because he might be a top 5 point guard. He might even be like a third team All-American point guard by the time the season is done, because he had another great game, 23 points, 9 rebounds, 8 of 11 from the field, 4 of 4 from 3-point line. Like, he's just an elite point guard at this point, and he's only a sophomore. There are people talking about him being a possible NBA prospect down the road, which you never would have thought about that for a guy that's sub 6 foot playing point guard in the Big Ten. Like, it's just impressive that he's able to play in the Big Ten. Now he's possibly the best point guard in the Big Ten and one of the top, 3 or 4 in the country. Like, he is playing with a huge chip on his shoulder, and I can't wait to see what this team does in March.
I mean, Zach Edey just tweeted, what was it, tonight? He said, if you're going to leave Braden Smith off your All-American ballot, go ahead and leave me off too, which
yep.
I don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah,
but,
that's bold. Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously he's got faith in his guy, and I would too, man. If I was getting passes the way that Braden Smith is throwing them to Zach Edey, man, I'd be all about it too, because, again, that's another thing. Like, people hate on Braden Smith because they say, like, oh, well, I'd be doing well too if I was passing to – a 7-4 target. And it's like, yes, the passes get there, but also, like, just look at where they are. Like, you look at passing placement in football, like, oh, this guy's in stride. Like, look at that as well with how Braden Smith is passing the ball to Zach Edey. Sometimes the ball is going directly, not sometimes, a lot of the times the ball is going directly where Zach Edey needs to move. And so it's almost like Braden Smith knows that, and he's guiding him there. That's not taking anything away from Zach Edey. They're just both really, really good. And it's honestly just one of the best combinations, not only in the Big Ten, but just in the country overall. So, Kent, what were your thoughts on the game?
Tweeted out last night I wasn't able to watch this game, daddy-daughter dance. No one cares about that, so I won't talk about it. But I got to see the last 10 minutes of this game, which was more than I thought I'd be able to watch. I did get a text at the dance that said that Michigan State was doing a good job with Edey in the first half. Was this true, boys? Is this true in the first half, or is this false? I didn't see it, so my hands are up right now.
I mean, it's
pretty sure Edey had double digits by halftime. Yeah, okay. It might just be the fact that he didn't have.
I know he finished with 32, so like the parts that I watched, he was not having any troubles at all. And kind of to what Russ was talking about, just a little bit about the complaining with Izzo. It's really fun, just from a neutral, like, bystander position, to watch Twitter, each fan base, like, kind of unravel after they play Purdue and complain about, because it happens in waves. Like, it's like I'll just throw Illinois, for example. We'll be super mad about it. Like, I remember Northwestern was really upset. And then each fan base, like, right after the game, now they're upset about, like, what's happening with Edey. So, like, again, just as a neutral party, it's fun to see that. And last night it was Michigan State with the screenshots and the videos. And it's like, at this point in the season, for me, it's like I just scroll right past it, because it's like I've seen this before. Like, it's going to be called the way that it's going to be called. You guys just need to get over it. But one point I will make, though, was it was nice. We talked about Lance Jones earlier. He did not have a big game. So it's nice to see Purdue get a big win. I say big win. Michigan State, I don't know how big of a win that is anymore, but it's a big win because they got a share of the Big Ten title yesterday. And they did it without a ton of help from Lance Jones, who is definitely my favorite player on Purdue's team. So nice to see that Purdue was able to do that without him, not totally without him, but without him having a big game. So those were my takeaways from the game, from seeing, like I said, about 1/4 of it.
Michigan State is no longer a big win. It has to be said. It is no longer a big win. They have a worse overall record than Ohio State. They have a worse overall record than Ohio State. It is no longer a big win. People can't say, oh, congratulations, you beat Ohio State, a terrible team, and then say, oh, well, we beat Michigan State. Great big win. I say this as an Ohio State fan who, they just beat Michigan State, where it's like, good, you beat them. You should beat them. You're a better team than them. They have
if anyone here is new, JR really doesn't want Michigan State to make the tournament this year.
I really don't.
I don't either, by the way.
They don't deserve it. They don't. And I'm not trying to be that hater or whatever. Like Tom Izzo and the streak and all that stuff. I'm purely looking at who has played the best game so far this year, and it's not been Michigan State. Yes, they played a hard schedule, but Mady Sissoko is not the answer at center. Carson Cooper, very good defender. I think he does a very good job there. He might need to be starting over Mady Sissoko, but it has been Tom Izzo's biggest mistake all season that he's not been starting Xavier Booker. He adds an element to this team with spreading out the floor, and he's not the best rebounder in the world, but that takes time in game to be able to develop that. And if he was actually starting him throughout the season, that would be much better now than it really was before, or that it really is right now. So anyway, end rant, sorry, but Michigan State, no longer a big win. Sorry. And I don't even consider it a big win for Ohio State. Yes, it's quad 1, so that looks nice on the paper, but thank you, numbers gods, for giving Michigan State big numbers so that way they can be quad 1. Anyway, all right, so here's the real question, all right, Russ, and we're going to kick this to you first. All right, best big man, front, forward, center, whatever you want to call it, in Purdue history. Is it Zach Edey? Is Zach Edey the best big man in Purdue history?
Yes. I think you're crazy if you say not, because he'll be back-to-back consensus, maybe even unanimous National Player of the Year now at this point. And for Purdue, I think he's like the 4th player to ever win any National Player of the Year award, and he'll be the only one to win it twice. So to me, he goes down as the most dominant and best player in Purdue history, period. I know, there's the Rick Mounts and the Glenn Robinsons, and I get that. But to me, Michael Jordan once said it's hard to compare different eras. The only thing you can compare is how dominant they were in their era. And I don't know if there's a player in an era that's been as dominant as what Zach Edey has been for Purdue the last 2 years. So to me, yes, he's 100% the best player and the most dominant player in Purdue basketball history. And you can't have the conversation about the best big men in Big Ten history without talking about Zach Edey now. I'm not saying he is, because like I said, it's hard to compare eras, but there's nobody, I don't think, that's been more dominant than him from a back to the basket perspective than what he has. And he's just got all around game. He's able to get out and out on the edge and play ball screens defensively and offensively. He shoots well from the free throw line. He doesn't really have a weakness other than how are you going to officiate him that night? That's about it.
Kent, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the tweet or not, but Jay Williams just posted that you're actually not even great until you win a title. And he said Zach Edey's not great because of that reason. So I don't know if he can be, because he's not great yet. Do you guys agree with that? What Jay Williams said about Zach Edey?
Well, I agree that women have to win a national championship.
Oh, that was just for women?
Really,
you are so in trouble tonight, man. I hope she's not watching this.
You're about to take over the Huddle for about a month or so.
She never watches any of these episodes. So my wife is the least supportive person. I'm just kidding. Anyway, go ahead.
Man, you're digging the wrong direction. I actually did do my homework on this a little bit, because I don't know a ton about Purdue's history, but the two guys that I came up with that would even be in the same conversation. First of all, to answer your question, yes, he's the best big man at Purdue ever. But the other two guys that I would put in the conversation was one that Russ mentioned already, Glenn Robinson, obviously 30 points per game in a season. He has to be mentioned. And he has the record still. I believe it's still going to be the record for most points in a season back in 93 and 94. And then the other guy, who I've actually never heard of until tonight, which I'm glad. That's why I love doing stuff like this, because when I do research, I get to learn new things, is Joe Barry Carroll. Yes. Great name. JBC, I think you have to say all three of his names, because that's how it was listed on the roster. And I would mention him because he's number one. He's 3rd all-time in scoring. And he also had, for people who like that postseason success, like Jay Williams, he's been to a Final Four before. So he would be the other guy that I would mention. And he's a 7-footer. So that's cool too. just like Zach Edey's over 7 foot. We love 7-footers, right? So Joe Barry Carroll, Glenn Robinson, the two guys that I would put in the same conversation, but it is Zach Edey for sure. Barring something ridiculous happening towards the end of the season, he's going to be the all-time leading scorer, already all-time leading rebounder. Russ already mentioned he's going to be back-to-back National Player of the Year. This is ridiculous. I mean, he's definitely, if not the best in the Big Ten, he's definitely the one at Purdue, the best big man ever to play at Purdue. And then also, like Russ says, I think he kind of touched on this a little bit, just what he's done for the whole game. I mean, like, you have to officiate him differently. You have to change what you're doing offensively when he's on the floor. You have to change what you're doing defensively a lot when he's on the floor. You might have to double, triple team him. So he's just done so much for Purdue, and he's I'm not going to say he's changed the game, but in a way he kind of has. And, definitely the best ever at Purdue. No doubt about it.
Russ, I'm surprised you didn't bring up the GOAT, John Wooden.
Well, he's not a big guy. He's, that's like I said.
I was going to say, how tall was he? I forget how tall. He was 3-time All-American, though.
Yeah, and he was actually the other National Player of the Year. So it was him, Rick Mount, and Glenn Robinson, and then
that's right,
Zach Edey. So yeah.
I don't remember how tall he was. I do remember though, like watching the old footage or like the old photos and stuff like that. Like he was really tall compared to the other guys. So I always thought, man, he is a big guy, but I don't know how much he was actually considered a big man at Purdue. That's a name you always have to bring up when you talk about Purdue history in my mind. So
also very, very interesting story. If you like history and you like John Wooden, he was actually the second choice for Purdue in a coaching search when Purdue's first choice fell through, and they called Wooden to offer him the job, and he said, "No, I've already taken the job at UCLA." So he was very close to being the Purdue head coach in that era. So who knows what could have been different then? But yeah,
could have had like 7 more national championships.
Fun fact: the first choice was Bob Knight back then. That was the first choice, and that fell through. We all know how that went.
I'm leaving. The Xavier Johnson with Zach Edey was bad enough. Now I got
it. We do have a few thoughts here. Philip says, if Purdue doesn't make the Sweet 16, how much does that taint Edey's legacy? So kind of going to the Jay Williams a route there a little bit. I don't know. I feel like that's in like the eye of the beholder. What do you think, Russ?
Well, I'd go back to the comments we talked about with Izzo post game, which was he said that this is the year he hopes that Painter makes the Final Four, and he should make the Final Four. But he also said that the tournament is a crapshoot. The one comparison I made in our pod a couple weeks ago was, when people play in the World Series of Poker, right, and you've got the best poker players in the world, and you always end up with really good poker players at the end, but to even get to the end, you have to win in 2 or 3 scenarios where you have like a 10% chance of winning that hand or moving on. And, the tournament's not that crazy, but you look at last year, and UConn was a 4 seed, and they won it all, and no 1, 2, or 3 seed even made the Final Four. In 1 seeds, I think the rate at making the Final Four over the last 5 or 6 years is like 25%. Only 1 in 4 on average even make the Final Four out of 1 seeds. So the tournament is just its own different animal, its own beast. And to me, I think it's harder to win a Big Ten regular season title where you can't just get hotter for 1 or 2 games. You've got to play a full 20-game schedule. Look at Wisconsin. Wisconsin was running away with it, but then all of a sudden they start tripping up. And some of the games they lost were not that close. Like Illinois, we'll talk about later. They were in that game for a decent portion of the game, but it's just hard to make a run all the way through a season. Whereas a tournament's just kind of like, hey, for 3 weekends, can you get hot? So I'm not going to talk about what may happen this year, though. I don't want to get to that yet. There's enough stress in my life.
Whoops. Sorry, not Jackson. Jackson, I do appreciate you, but I did not mean to bring up your comment. He said it. Tarek here. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Says Taint's Painter in Purdue's legacy, not Edey's. He's not the one who built this team and this style of play. So that's another way to look at it there. Unfortunately, guys, I can't get to every single comment. Thankfully, we will get to 1,000 subscribers here soon. We only have 40 left, and once we do that, we can have super chats, and you guys can super chat your comments in, and I will read those. I do try to read as many as possible, but we do have to get on to the next ones here, so I apologize.
So hit that subscribe button, everybody. Go ahead and pound it right now, that subscribe button. Let's do it.
Here's what I need you to do. I need you to take your wife's phone and go subscribe.
There you go.
I need you to get a phone for your dog and have him subscribe, okay? I know you all out there have children who have YouTube, and I need you to go subscribe with their stuff. We're family-friendly here, okay? The only one who cusses a lot is Spartan Dog, Okay, and he's just kind of like an acquired taste.
Wait, what's a super chat though, JR? I need to know what this is. Is it just like everything comes up on the screen?
No, super chat is where like you pay money to have your chat like highlighted, and then the people generally, I don't think you have to do it, but generally like the idea is like if you super chat, then whoever's hosting will bring your super chat on and talk about it because you paid money for it. And we're like,
gotcha.
That's like $2 to $10 or something. I guess you can go higher, but I've literally never seen anybody go higher than $10 ever. Which
We're
if you
do 15 on this show, $15 everybody for the super chat starting next week. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers on the Big Ten Huddle, JR, that's right.
Hey, we just gained one. Jackson is helping us out here, 39 away, so from 1,000. So yes,
let's go.
Somebody went and took their wife's phone and subscribed for us.
When you start getting paid comments, Dylan's going to be putting food on your table, JR. He's going to be paying your bills for you.
If he wants to come in here and pay to tell me I'm handsome, I'm all for it. All right, let's get to the next game. Illinois versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin fans are down bad after this loss. It was a home game for Wisconsin, and Illinois just essentially took care of business in this one. I didn't get to watch this one as much as I wanted to because I was actually busy during the day at this time, so I'll kind of lean into you guys a little bit more for this one. But Kent, go ahead and start us off. What were your thoughts on this game?
I wrote a bunch of notes about Wisconsin, and I tweeted that they were probably excited that the calendar flipped over to March, and then this game happened, and they're probably not excited anymore. 2-7 since February started. Ridiculous. And again, this was a team we were talking about challenging Purdue as possibly winning the Big Ten outright, and that at that time it didn't seem crazy, but it seems crazy now. Yeah, for this game it was mainly Marcus Damask, and more of Marcus Damask coming down the stretch. And again, I don't think there's really not a ton of Big Ten teams that do a horrible job defensively. But I know I said this pretty much the same comment earlier. Wisconsin did a pretty good job guarding him. Tyler Wall was kind of sticking him pretty good. And Damask was it's hard to guard somebody that's able to back you down a little bit and then fade away. Like it's really hard to block that shot, right? But I thought he had good position. I know, Russ, I just saw you make a face. I thought he had good position is what I'm trying to say. He stayed in front of him at least. He wasn't getting to the basket. Most of his shots, especially down the stretch, were fadeaway shots and going away from the basket, which is tough to guard. But yeah, good win for Illinois. Any road win is a good win. Even if it's Wisconsin, it's a road win. And they were able to get that done. So I guess a decent win for them. Illinois is tough. I thought that Wisconsin played probably the best that they could play the first 15 minutes of this game. And Illinois, I believe, I might be misremembering this, but I believe Illinois was still winning at halftime or maybe down 2. So they were able to take Wisconsin's punch and then obviously able to win the game at the end. So Illinois is just really tough, man. What else can you say about them? They got a lot of scorers. And I'll go back to what we said a little bit last week. I'm still kind of worried about the fact that they can't get stops at all and they just outscore everybody. But it's getting to the point now where they are outscoring everybody, and I'm less concerned about the defense and more just kind of focusing on the fact that maybe they can just outscore every team that they play for the rest of the year.
I was actually going to bring that up because Wisconsin has scored less points than Minnesota, Iowa, and Penn State against Illinois. Like, yes, the loss is concerning for Wisconsin, but at the same time, like, this is a Wisconsin team that was regularly scoring in the 80s against just regular defenses.
Yeah.
And then you have not only Illinois with their defense, but also with their pace of play, which of course does add to the score as well, which makes it, look like that. But still, from what I watched of this game, it didn't look like Illinois was letting up on their pace of play. It didn't look like, Wisconsin obviously plays at a slower pace at times, but I didn't see anything like egregious in this game when I watched that said that Wisconsin slowed it down all that much to where it was like egregious or anything. But at a certain point, this was what Wisconsin was kind of hanging their hat on earlier in the year. Like, yeah, we're going to score 80 on you regularly, be really efficient and play good defense. And now, of course, nobody really plays all that good defense against Illinois because it's Illinois. But now, they're not even doing that as well. So, there's a lot of concerns here I have for Wisconsin. Russ, what were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so, I'm going to say some things. So I want to start with saying Illinois is clearly the second best team in the conference. You can't have a conversation about the best coach in the conference without mentioning Brad Underwood. Although I've talked to Sonny about this, and the 5-year mark is the only mark where you can pick out that Underwood has the most wins in the conference since he's been in the conference. If you go back further or you go back more recent, Painter has more. So it's like that's the one cherry-picked range. So I'll say that. But and they even talked about Terrence Shannon Jr. in this game that they've said things about him that they say about Edey, which is I don't know what you do to play defense against him. And at times it was that way with Domask too. Like, yes, Wall was playing great defense, but great offense is always going to be great defense, right? Like, you can be in the right spot, you can do the right things defensively, you can put them in the worst spot to make a shot, and if they're having a night, they're just going to hit the shot. There's nothing you can do about it. And that's Domask is one of those stories we talked about earlier it's a really great story to have a transfer, being from Wisconsin, his family's in the stands because they're at Wisconsin, and he just goes off. That was really great to see. But if I'm a Wisconsin fan, man, that's one of the most frustrating games to probably watch your team lose because, like I said, Underwood's a great coach. He puts his team in a great place. They're very efficient offensively, but they don't do anything special. I don't understand how he gets this credit for being this basketball savant offensively, which, they are efficient offensively. So you can't really fault the guy for what he does or doesn't do, but it's just ISO offense, right? It's either score on a fast break or spread everybody out and give it to somebody one-on-one and score the ball. But it was frustrating because Wisconsin also wasn't helping. So you're watching the Illinois arrogant offense basically just saying, hey, we're going to beat you one-on-one because we got all these scores. But then Wisconsin saying, hey, we're just going to keep going one-on-one and let you score, and they're not going to change anything. Like, at some point, you've got to do something to help on Domask. You got to do something to get in front of Terrence Shannon Jr. on a fast break. But they just didn't seem to change anything up defensively. And so Illinois didn't have to do anything offensively. But I think Illinois is going to run into problems because I heard it might have been on Sunday with the Illini Cast or another Illinois podcast I was listening to where they said they're basically a more expensive version or a higher efficient, higher output version of Iowa, right? They're all offense, no defense. And what has Iowa done in the tournament? Not really anything. What is Illinois? What Underwood hasn't made a second weekend. So I think they're going to have to figure out defense a little bit to be able to get to a second weekend. But they definitely are one of the best teams in the conference and the best teams in the country. It's going to be hard, I think, if they run into a team that slows them down a little bit and then just keeps running out the score on their defense like everybody else has been doing to Illinois.
Yeah, I said that last episode when we talked about the defense and, like Illinois and kind of, compared them to Iowa. The only thing I'll say about that, and I think I made the caveat in the episode. If I didn't, I apologize. But the only thing I'll say about that is that Illinois does have more athletic guys than Illinois has had in the past, or as Iowa has had in the past. Like, yes, Iowa.
Hey! Have you seen Peyton Sanford play basketball?
He is very good. Don't get me wrong. Like the Murray brothers and Garza, like those guys. But I still feel like the supporting cast around a Terrence Shannon Jr. for Illinois is more athletic and is better than, Garza had at Iowa and the Murray twins had there as well. Again, not trying to disparage them. Those were great players that did have good supporting casts around them that fit them well. I just feel like the supporting cast around Terrence Shannon Jr. and Coleman Hawkins are better, and Marcus Domask. And that's another part of it. It's like any of those guys can drop 30. I think all of those guys have dropped 30 at least one point this season. I don't know. I don't know any other team in the country. Of course, I don't really pay attention much more to them Big Ten basketball, but I don't know any other team in the country that has had 3 players drop more than 30 in a game this season. I don't know. If you guys pay more attention and somebody, please let me know. But I think the biggest storyline coming out of this game, because obviously Illinois defense, that kind of stuff gets talked about all the time, is just how much like Wisconsin fans are continuing to badger, pun intended, that Greg Gard needs to be fired. And even we have people in the chat talking about it here, like Greg Gard needs to get out of here. Is he going to be fired after this season? The guy has 2 Coach of the Year awards, and he's been good, but obviously he had his hard season last year, and now you're kind of seeing him fall off at the end again this year. I mean, Kent, if you had to make a prediction or give your thoughts, I guess however you want to give it, should Greg Gard be fired here at the end of the season?
I don't think he should, and I don't think that he will be either. Chris McIntosh, I believe I'm pronouncing his name right as my microphone's falling down here. He was hired in 2001, and he has not seen Greg Gard not have a 20-win season. So it's going to be hard for a guy that came in way after him, that is his boss, to say, hey, I know you win 20 games every year, but you're fired. That's going to be really tough for him to say. And like you said, the 2 coach of the years, like within the last 5 years, they haven't missed a tournament yet. They're not going to this year either, unless, I mean, that would be crazy if they didn't make it. And they're also just not a school that gets rid of coaches that quickly. And I not that quickly, but just for that small of a reason is what I'm trying to say. I mean, I know he's been there for a while now, but they're a school that keeps their coaches for a really long time. That's kind of like, a tradition of theirs, I would say. So I don't think that he should. I don't think that he will. I think that it's good fodder for the fans to say, like, let's fire our coach. I'm upset that we lost, but it's not going to happen.
Well, the problem is what Ohio State did, firing Chris Holtmann. Now every team is going to think that, like, oh, if we just fire the head coach, the assistant will come in and he'll start winning all these games. It's like, guys, no, it doesn't normally work like that. This is not a normal situation where the assistant coach's first game goes in and beats one of, if not the best coach in the Big Ten. Like, that doesn't happen. Russ, what are your thoughts? Will Wisconsin fire Greg Gard here at the end of the season?
Yeah, I won't call any out specifically, but there's a lot of fan bases out there that will tell you the grass is not always greener. That, having 20-win seasons is nice when you're going 5 or 6 straight seasons not making a tournament. There's a lot of fan bases out there that would take a 20-win season any year. And, the Big Ten is just a tough conference. There is I said it earlier, it's a harder thing to win the Big Ten regular season, I think, than have, a Sweet 16 Elite 8 run, because this conference is just so deep. You cannot take a week off. You cannot take a game off. I mean, 80% of home teams have won going into this season or going into this weekend. So, and that's higher than any other conference in the nation. Like, it's hard to win on the road. So you look at this recent run of Wisconsin's losses, and what game really ticks you off? What game are you mad about? Losing at Nebraska where nobody else is winning. Losing at home to Purdue, which, Purdue's leading the conference. Losing at Michigan, yeah, that's rough, but it was a 4-point loss.
Yeah, that would be the one.
Yeah, that might be the one. But, at Rutgers, that's a tough place to win. Home against Ohio State, they took care of business. At Iowa, a 2-point loss at Iowa. So it's, in Illinois, they were in that game, like I said, for most of the game, but Illinois just came out on the end. And there's such a fine margin between winning and losing in this conference that it's hard to can your coach on a 20-win season. Like, I don't get that.
Yeah, I think you'd have to have a year kind of like what Chris Holtmann had last year in order to, like, give that justification to the administration, right? Because you're right, Kent. Like, they've never seen a non-20-win season. And even last year, that wasn't great. Did they win the NIT, or did they get to the NIT championship last year? They did something in the NIT that was impressive. I forget what it was, but they like, there have been aspects of their seasons that have been good each year, even with these fall offs happening. So it's interesting. I don't think Wisconsin will fire him. I think there has to be some kind of, like I said, a Chris Holtmann type fall off where they have a losing record or something like that. And then if you have one of these fall offs at the end of the year, then you could see something like that happening. So we'll see. Excuse me. We'll see what happens, but it's kind of where I'm at with it all. All right, guys, before we move on to the next one, do we want to remind everybody about CBB Analytics? Go check out CBB Analytics. They give us a free pro tier to tell you about them each and every episode. It's great stuff. Really awesome for not just content on the show, but also content putting out there for social media and stuff. I've not been as good with social media lately, but I do need to get back to it. And CBB Analytics makes it super easy to do that with all the great analytics they put out there for us. So there is a free tier to that as well. So go check out the free tier. And if you like it, then go pay for the pro tier, because it is good content and they put a lot of good work into it. So like I said, CBB Analytics, go check them out. All right, Iowa and Northwestern. We have an Iowa team here that's looking a little dangerous, looking a little bubbly here at the end of the year. And I said a few episodes ago that this is one of the wins they had to have at Northwestern. Now, it did help that Northwestern's missing a few key guys here. Boo Buie did his absolute best to try and will his team to victory, played 39 minutes, 27 points. So a huge offensive performance for him. However, it was not enough. Iowa proved to be the more offensively inclined team with the 87 to 80 points. But at the end of the day, Iowa making a bit of a bid here for the NCAA tournament, and Northwestern falling off a little bit. I won't say they have fallen off at all, but the net ratings and things like that are not in their favor, so they can use every win that they can get. Russ, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I said that 80% of home teams have won going into this weekend, but home teams were only 4-3 this weekend, right? Iowa got it done on the road, and like you said, they're a team that looks like they should be in the tournament, but do they have the resume and the schedule that will let them get in the tournament, that will get the committee to put them in? But I would make a suggestion. We're going through realignment, we're going through NCAA possibly being done. You guys watch European soccer much? So I would want to see. So they do this format. You know what the Champions League is? Have you heard of the Champions League?
I know about how do you pronounce it?
Relegation.
Yeah.
So that's not where I'm going. I'm not going relegation route, but I'm going. They have what's called the Champions League, which is if you picture, each conference in the Big Ten, or in the Big Ten, each conference of college basketball being its own country, and then the NCAA tournament being like the Champions League. That's kind of how it works over there, right? They have the Italian league, the European, the English league, the French league. And they take like the top teams from each league and they put them in a Champions League and they crown a European champion. So what I think they should do in college basketball is maybe do away with college basketball or conference tournaments and sit there and say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to say, the Big Ten is one of the top conferences. We're going to give them the top 5 teams in their standings or the top 4 teams in their standings. They make the tournament. The SEC, the top 4, the top 5 teams in the standings make the tournament. And do that with every conference. The bottom conferences, they get the top 1 team. But then take like the next 4 teams in the standings, put them in a tournament against like the 4 teams in the SEC, and then say the team that wins that tournament or the top 2 teams in that tournament, they make the NCAA tournament. Because I feel like, the Big Ten is they're so good at beating each other up. And there's so many teams that you get to the end of the year and they're like, well, they're 11-9 in the Big Ten or they're 12-8 in the Big Ten. But, they're right on the bubble or do they really deserve to get in? Like an Ohio State or an Iowa, teams that make these late runs that people already have set in their mind, no, the Big Ten only is going to make 5 teams in the tournament or 6 teams. But, I think that the Big Ten has shown through the years that they have a good enough product that they deserve to have a certain set number of teams, it seems like, each year. So I think that'd be a cool thing to do because Iowa does, they did look like a team. And coming in this year, they had 2 guards in the top 10 guards list in the conference, 2 bigs in the top 10 bigs in the conference. Like they're a very talented team that deserves to play postseason basketball. They just have not had the wins to maybe get themselves there.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Perkins and Peyton Stanford are fantastic, and they are 2 of the best players, not just on their team, but in the conference, realistically. I don't think they get the love. Now, I'm not saying they're like top 5 or anything like that, but when you take like the best players from each team, those are 2 of them for Iowa, and they can be talked up there with just about any player up at the top of the conference. So I'm not saying they are the best. Don't get my comments confused, but I am saying those are better players than people give them credit for. And I like your idea, Russ, and I think that it should happen. The only problem is they're never going to entertain it until the Big Ten starts winning games in the NCAA tournament, which is stupid and it sucks. I hate it. However, it is what it is, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. I do think that the Big Ten is kind of better than they've showcased this year in some ways. Like Wisconsin has fallen off, but they did have that win over Marquette. They did beat Virginia in the offseason or in the out of conference. So I do think they are better, or some of those teams are better than maybe they get credit for. However, it's hard to say. But Kent, what were your thoughts on the games, or what Russ said? Do you have any thoughts there?
So many thoughts. I got to go back to something you said, actually. You said Tony Perkins doesn't get enough love. Have you met me before, bro?
Well, he does from you, but not other people.
Yeah.
When he called out athletic Iowa players, you didn't even bring up Perkins. You brought up Sanford. I was shocked. I was like, I thought Kent was a Perkins fan.
Yeah, that's because that was a joke. And he's not athletic. Tony Perkins is athletic. And he is still and always will be for this year. I always pick one guy for the year. Tony Perkins, favorite player of the year this year. This game, I just thought I wrote a ton of notes. I'll just skim through a couple of them, though. I thought it was weird how identical some of their stats were from like the shooting perspective. They were absolutely identical from 3, both 10, 4, 20. And then if you wanted to look for a stat that was the reason that Iowa won, I was pretty shocked that it was because of rebounding. They actually beat them by 7, 29-22 in rebounding. So I know Collins was heated after this game when he saw that was one of the reasons that they lost this was because they got out rebounded. He's going to be upset. And I'm actually pretty shocked that they won that rebounding battle. But Iowa fun to think about right now. I know we're going to talk about them, or maybe we're not. Maybe we're going to skip over that part. But them making the tournament, they are. They're just not there yet for me. I don't think they're going to actually make it unless they make like a big run in the Big Ten tournament, which I just don't foresee that happening. Even though they are hot right now, they've just been so touch and go this year that I just don't think they can put it together for the whole the duration of the weekend.
So you agree with the numbers that Northwestern's not going to make the Big Ten tournament, or it's not going to make the NCAA tournament?
Northwestern or Iowa?
Oh, I wrote down Northwestern. You're talking about Iowa.
I was talking about Iowa not making it.
Oh,
Northwestern, on the other hand, I do think should make it.
Okay, yeah,
I do.
Yeah, I think Iowa.
I guess I was lost.
No, Iowa. I mean, they did what they had to do, beating Northwestern at Northwestern. I do think that it's unfortunate for Iowa because Northwestern doesn't have. Again, I'll harp on it every single time. Northwestern doesn't have the numbers that they should have because Michigan State is like the third best net in the conference, and Northwestern is like 6th or 7th, which is just so stupid. Net is broken. I mean, nobody looks at Northwestern and says that's a worse team than Michigan State. I don't know
exactly
how you do.
What I wrote down. Like I wrote down way too many notes, but just to skim through some of that net stuff because I know the net is what a lot of people are talking about. Northwestern's 53 right now. Yeah. Michigan State is 22, I believe, in the net.
Yeah.
And they are 8-12 against quad 1 and 2. Michigan State is. Northwestern 10-8. So that just doesn't make any sense to me that they're ranked almost 30 spots below Michigan State in the net, and they have that much better of a record. I think you guys can correct me if I'm wrong about this. I think it's because of the Chicago State loss still that's just dragging them down, which is, I get it. It's a bad loss, but it's also a team that beat Purdue this year. So like, to me, they cancel out, but I know to other people they don't because it's a historic loss to lose to Chicago State. But man, for a 1-point loss against a really bad team, I get it. Everybody has an off night now and again. I guess you just can't do it against that bad of a team, I guess. I don't know. That's just crazy that it drags them down that much.
Well, that drags them down, and then it's also the out-of-conference schedule. Like, there are teams that they wanted to hit on, didn't hit. Dayton is not, they're obviously a good team, 22-6, but they're still third in the A10 right now. So that's not, the first place team, no doubt, in the A10, like you would think, which I do think they're probably, one of the best in the Big Ten or in the A10. And then Arizona State is they're not having the season they need to have. They're 14-15. So like neither of those teams are hitting, and they lost to Mississippi State, who was their other big out of conference team. And like when you tell me that Dayton, Mississippi State, and Arizona State are your three big teams to play out of conference, and you go 2-1 in those, like that's the hard part with the conference, with the scheduling and stuff like that, is like you have to schedule harder teams than that. They're kind of getting bit like who was it last year that missed the tournament? Rutgers, because they didn't have enough hard teams in the schedule last year in the out of conference. So I don't know. It's crazy. We'll see. I hate that because at the end of the day, like I think you can tell from Northwestern playing in the Big Ten, they're better than that. But
do you think that the next game for Northwestern at Michigan State, do you think whoever wins that game, everyone's going to be like, that team's in and the other team's out? Is that what's going to happen in that game?
I don't know. That's a good point. What do you think, Russ?
I was going to comment on this as well, that you guys talked about making runs in the tournament and these late wins in the season. I don't think they really impact the committee at all. As much as we talk about this team's got to win 2 or 3 games in the tournament, I don't know that there's many cases you can point to and say this team made the tournament because they made a run and won 3 games in the Big Ten tournament. So I think at this point, if Northwestern's going to make it, they're in. If they aren't, then there's nothing they can do to get themselves in besides win the Big Ten tournament. I think they could be that team that you look at and you go, most people think they're going to be a 7 seed or an 8 seed or a 9 seed, and then they all of a sudden miss the tournament completely. Like they 100% can, and then people are going to point to, as you're talking about, JR, the metrics and say, well, they're outside the top 50 in net, and teams outside the top 50 don't make the tournament.
I mean, even if they win one of their next 2 games, right? Michigan State and Minnesota, like we're talking about a 12 conference win team in the Big Ten. not making the NCAA tournament.
We've seen that before. There was a year Nebraska finished, I think, 4th in the conference at 12-8, and they missed the tournament.
Do you remember what year that was?
Give me a second. Go to the next topic.
That would be correct. To me, if they win, like maybe this is my extra casualness coming out, but anytime someone gets to 20 wins, I'm like, they're in. Done. They got to 20 wins. I don't care who they played. They won 20 games. They should be in the tournament. Now, obviously, that doesn't always happen, but there's also been cases where it's been the other way, where like someone gets like 18 or 19 wins, and it's like they do get in, and it's like I just don't understand how that's the case. Like, I understand the part about like you got to play tougher teams and you got to beat tougher teams, but at the end of the day, you do also have to just win the games. And Northwestern has done that. They have won 20 games, and more than likely they'll have 21 or 22 wins before the Big Ten tournament. If they get to 22 wins and they don't get in, I'm rioting. Like, they have to get in at that point, right?
22 wins at the end of the regular season, or
like if they win their last 2 games here.
I mean, yeah, it's just a product of the Big Ten is not respected this year, and we can say the Big Ten is weak, and I get that. I'm not against that. Like, there are aspects of the Big Ten not being as good this year as it previously has been, but at the same time, like, it's still like let's remember, this is still the richest conference in all of college athletics. This is still where some of the highest paid coaches are in college basketball. Like, even if Northwestern did not play a super hard out of conference schedule, like they're still taking basketball very seriously. I don't know. I guess that's not a good argument, but still, I'm with you, Kent. Like, if you win 22 games and you're in the Big Ten, or what would that be? 13 games in the conference. Like, that would just be absolutely unheard of if you don't make the tournament.
Yeah, if they didn't make it at that point, that would be crazy.
I mean, if they win,
I think they're in right now. Just for the record, for all the listeners out there, I think that they're already in, and I think they should be already in. I saw a graphic today making its rounds that they were on the bubble, and I got upset.
Yeah,
I got sad.
Yeah. Russ, you got the year there?
So it was 2013, 2014. And they finished 11-7 because it was an 18 game conference schedule. Okay. And I'm sorry, they did make the tournament as an 11 seed. So I think it was the lowest of 4th team the Big Ten has ever been seeded in the NCAA tournament, I believe. So, but they were on the cusp of missing the tournament. So I missed it.
Yeah. And Philip makes a good point here. He says the Big Ten doesn't have the dead fish to play anymore, other than Michigan, to build up wins for the rest of the conference. Oh, except Michigan. He said it there. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like, Penn State, they have a losing record on the year, but what's their Big Ten record is 8-11. Like, when you're 14-16 on the year, over half of your wins are in the conference. Like, you know, it's kind of a weird year when you got stuff like that going down. So, all right, guys, let's get to our final game. We've gone over here again, but that's just kind of what happens on the Sunday night episodes. Minnesota beats Penn State. We were just talking about them, 14-16 at Penn State. Obviously, not the best year in the world, but I think there is a future for them. But Minnesota is having a pretty good year. Unfortunately, their quad 1 record is not where they want it to be, only being 1-7. But this was also a team that was picked to finish last in the Big Ten, and now they're 9-9, and they're 18-11 on the season. So Ben Johnson is doing some really, really cool stuff with them this season. And Minnesota, they got down early. They got down big, and it was a tough stretch. But Minnesota, credit to them, they were able to claw back, come back, and win this game against, like I said, a good Penn State team, even if their record doesn't show that they're all that good or anything. But Russ, let's start with you first. What were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, just incredibly impressed with Minnesota's resilience. I mean, their tourney hopes are on life support, and they basically played like it. There were some games, and we aren't going to talk about it, but there's some games that we didn't talk about in the Big Ten this weekend, that there was teams that you watch play and you're just like, you don't care anymore. But Minnesota 100% played their butts off, and they did everything they could to try to stay within like that 10 to 12 point mark. And then finally kind of broke through in that second half where they went, I think it was a 10-0 run with about 12 minutes left. They went on a 10-0 run to get back in the game. And then they took another, went back a couple points, and they took another 9-0 run to go up 4 points. And that kind of helped them basically put the game away or hang on to the game at that point. But yeah, Minnesota, I mean, if they're, I would say a riot like Kent did, but if there was a team I wanted to pick out of the Big Ten that I want them to make the tournament, it's Minnesota, because I feel like they deserve it. They've worked their butts off. They've exceeded expectations, and they play like they want to make the tournament. And the one person I would feel for most if that happens is Jamison Battle, because I can't imagine what he would feel like to go to another school that I won't name that school that's probably not going to make the tournament, and then watch his old team make the tournament.
If only they would have fired the coach sooner. They would have been making the tournament. Kent, what were your thoughts?
If they don't make the tournament, the person I'm going to feel the most bad, the worst for is Parker Fox, because he's my favorite person on the team. He actually played really well yesterday. I was pretty surprised, or not surprised. I'm never surprised. Parker Fox always plays well, and they needed every minute they got out of him yesterday. But yeah, just quickly on this game, Penn State just nerfed it. Like, they had Minnesota on the ropes, but they couldn't finish them off. And like Russ said, Minnesota just kind of chipped away. And then once they had the lead, you knew it was over. You knew it was over once Minnesota took the lead. They were definitely going to win that game. So I am cheering for them to make the tournament more than any other team, just like Russ. I want them to be in the tournament so bad. I think that they deserve it as well. They have come from the bottom. It's weird because they haven't really come from the bottom of the conference. It's just where everybody expected them to be, right? But yeah, just the season that they've had, they're really easy to cheer for. We've talked about this all year, JR. So many fun players on their team. I really hope that they are able to make it somehow. It's going to be tough, but I hope that they make it, and I'm cheering for them the most as well, just like Russ. I love Minnesota.
I love watching Elijah Hawkins for a new reason, because I feel like he glides around the court. That's, I mean, obviously if you watch him, you can see that, but that's another thing I picked up this weekend when I was watching. I was like, man, this dude is literally just like gliding around the court with how fast and how smooth he is. And I cannot say enough good things about Elijah Hawkins. Elijah Hawkins is to me as Tony Perkins is to you, Kent. I mean, there is
really?
nobody.
Yeah, I mean, I like him too. I actually tweet, it's funny you bring that up, because I put that out that after watching that game, I was wondering, just in a straight up race, who do you think the fastest guy in the Big Ten is? And I listed him, Doug McDaniel, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Jameer Young. Is there someone I'm missing on that list? It's just the straight up fastest guy.
Shannon Jr. is fast.
So fast.
Very fast.
Dude he is lightning quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's honestly scary how fast he is for how big he is.
I know.
Talking about Elijah Hawkins, I don't want to go back too far, but did you see last week when Minnesota played Illinois and Underwood got interviewed at halftime and he called Elijah Hawkins that little kid?
Yeah.
I heard about it. I didn't see it though.
Yeah.
So that little kid's really hurting us. Hawkins. Yeah.
I mean, he's super small. But that adds to his game. That's an aspect to his game that I love, because he is undersized out there. But I guess I won't say super small. It's not like he's 5'6" or something like that. But he is undersized, and that's an aspect to his game that I enjoy and I think he utilizes. So I mean, we were asked earlier about the rest of Minnesota's schedule. To just be frank, and I mean, no hate by this, because I really like Minnesota this year, but even if they win these next two games at the end of the season, Indiana and at Northwestern, I feel like to even have a chance for the Big Ten or for the NCAA tournament, you got to make it to the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament.
Which they will. They will, by the way.
They will. Okay.
They will, because I'm going to be there, and so is Minnesota. By the way, Minnesota fans are going to be deep. We are going to be deep at the Big Ten tournament. I say we. There's going to be a lot of us there, a lot of the Gophers there. It's funny. I'm actually sitting in Nebraska's section, or whatever you want to call it. You know how they give them to each school? I'll be with the Nebraska fans, but I will be cheering for Minnesota extremely, even if they play Nebraska. I've made my decision.
Wait, how'd you get in Nebraska's section?
Well, because half their fans are still figuring out half their fans are still figuring out they have a basketball season or basketball team.
Yeah, that's the other reason. I thought that would probably be where I could get the closest seats. Yeah, and I did get pretty good seats. I'm in lower level, so I'm pretty excited about it.
The Nebraska fans.
Me and the other 7 people that are going to the Big Ten tournament.
I was going to say, and Nebraska fans, I'm just poking fun for 1 second. I do like you, but the Nebraska basketball court home game atmosphere started when everybody thought they were showing up for a women's basketball game, but it was actually a women's volleyball game. It was actually a Nebraska basketball game. They're like, hey, these guys are good. Let's keep coming back. Just joking. Hey, but women's volleyball, don't sleep in women's volleyball in Lincoln. Like,
don't try to get the women back
Big
now.
Ten in general, the Big Ten is probably the.
Yeah.
Sorry,
what were you saying, Russ?
I was just saying the Big Ten in general, women's volleyball just it slams. What do the kids say? But the Big Ten I think had at 1.8 teams ranked in the top 25 in women's volleyball.
Yeah,
so,
something like that.
Yeah,
it's women's volleyball and wrestling. Got Iowa, Penn State. Ohio State had a guy that was really, really good. I don't know if Ohio State's still good or not, but no, I mean, do you guys think that's not right? I mean, Minnesota 1-7 in quad one games. It's unfortunate, but I think like the computers just don't love them enough. Like they're going to have to do something substantial. I want to say they need to make it to the Big Ten championship, but like the part of me that's like hoping that's not true is like giving them a little bit extra. I mean, Russ, do you agree? What do you think?
I mean, the realist in me says they probably have to win the tournament to make it. Because like I said before, I don't think that tournament wins really mean anything because maybe the committee just chalks it up to a team like Illinois or Purdue would rather maybe win one game in the tournament and then rest up for the NCAA tournament, so because the Big Ten tournament is just as much of a crapshoot as what the NCAA tournament is, right? Like we've had 6, 7, 8 seeds win the Big Ten tournament as well. So I think Minnesota, the realist in me thinks Minnesota has to win the tournament to make the tournament.
Wow. What do you think, Kent?
And that's what we'll do then. You know what I'm saying? We'll go there and do that then. If that's what we got to do, that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna text all my Minnesota friends after this. We're all gonna be there. I'm gonna text the players, and I'm gonna say, "Hey guys, just got off the Big Ten huddle. Russ is saying that we have to win the Big Ten tournament, so let's just go do it now." And they'll be like, "All right, let's do it."
I don't know how the tiebreakers will work out, but they could actually get to enough wins to be a Friday team, to be a double bye team. So they could get as high as I think the 4th or the 5th seed. So they could put themselves in position to make a run.
Because Northwestern would have to lose to, but Nebraska's not losing to Rutgers and Michigan. Well, I guess that would leave one more spot because Wisconsin. Yeah, you're right. They're 9-9 right now. They could finish 11-9 in the conference and get there. But is that good for them, though? They would need, the more.
Well, yeah, because like I said, I think they have to win the tournament. So at this point, they need to put themselves in a good enough position to have the best route to win the thing, not get 1 or 2 wins.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Minnesota. You guys have any more thoughts on Minnesota before we get out of here?
I don't. I'm sorry. I wish I did.
We love you, Minnesota. We're rooting for you. And if you and Ohio State both make the conference or the NCAA tournament, I will die happy whenever I die. It doesn't matter. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. Russ, why don't you tell people where they can find your Purdue podcast at?
Yeah, so just look up Boiler Express anywhere you look up podcasts. You'll find us anywhere, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook. We're on there. Go check us out.
I appreciate it, Kent. Why don't you tell people about you?
At Casual Big Ten on X or Twitter, if you're still calling it that, which I do. Haven't done a podcast in like a month now. I think I'm just completely done with the podcast stuff. It's just takes too much time. You guys know how it goes.
Kent
you
is
guys
ours
have done
now.
podcasts before. It's a lot of time. And you know what? I have just as much fun coming on this show and saying pretty much the exact same stuff I would have said on my show. So I've just been doing the Twitter stuff. Twitter's been really fun lately. Check it out. Tomorrow, it is the Sweet 16 of the first annual hypothetical 2-on-2 Big Ten basketball tournament. Please come check that out. We need votes. Actually, we don't really need votes. We got like 200 votes per game last week, which was pretty impressive.
Is Zach Edey and Xavier Johnson still in it?
They're still in it. They are still alive.
That's my favorite pairing. I will never not vote for that pairing, just so that Russ has to keep.
Makes me sick. Makes me sick.
So some comments here before we get going. Dave says, "We love you too." I think that's in response to the Minnesota love. So that's what I'm going to go with. Thank you, Dave. Yes, we are. I'm going to buy some Minnesota gear before the season is over. I'm going to buy some Minnesota gear and wear it on this podcast.
1 week then to do that.
Well, no, like the NCAA season. I don't think
okay.
shipping's that fast. I mean, I'm not paying for shipping to be that fast. I don't have much money.
Yeah. True.
Michael says, "Have a good night." And are you going to be on again tomorrow night, JR? No, our next episode will be Tuesday night. It'll be the football episode. I don't have any plans for the football episode yet. Well, we'll probably talk about the 14-team playoff thing, and Zach will be on for that one. And then Wednesday night will be our next basketball episode. So, all right, I think that's all the comments and everything. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night. Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Kent, for being here. Appreciate it. See you next time.